Daria.
How was your Super Bowl Sunday?
I was
Did you
sleeping
celebrate?
like a normal person, and 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 making comments about American football.
Well, it was so. I think it was the highest watched. I was listening today. It had like 193 million viewers.
Oh,
Something
I'm
insane. It
sure.
was really, really, really insane. I feel like the
Yeah,
Taylor Swift effect really, really took hold.
of
I actually saw
course.
ESPN, and I think there was a commercial. ESPN did a very cute um, TikTok where it was like this time last year, and it was just a father and son who are Chiefs fans, like watching it together. And then they cut to this year where it's like 15 people in their family all watching it and being very
I think it's
exciting, and it's just
great.
creating this, this little family engagement. But you probably didn't watch the whole game because it ended at 2 a.m. your time,
Yeah, no, I
something like
didn't.
that.
I didn't watch it. I didn't
Okay,
watch it
well,
at all.
it was a good game. Travis Kelsey, I just read, clocked in a run at almost 20 miles an hour, which is insane. I think the
Yeah, it's
fastest my legs
fast.
can move is like 9 for like 8 seconds. And he's a big guy. I mean, I guess he has the long legs to kind of help with that, but 20 miles an hour is absolutely insane.
Yeah,
Absolutely
it's. I
insane.
mean, it's pretty fast. Look, it was very. I mean, it was very exciting. It's turned what is ostensibly a sport that really is only played in one country, a few, into just getting more eyes on the sport. I don't
Yeah.
know how that can be disputed, because then that filters down. You get like sports teams, people want to, the superstar effect
The
on.
superstar effect is great. It was funny. I was watching the New Heights podcast this morning, and a couple of fun things. One, Jason was saying how like even the most famous of famous people are like clamoring to get into their suite to meet Taylor. That like Shaq was turned away,
Oh wow, oh wow.
and Paul McCartney made it in. And then I was also just kind of like hilariously thinking about, Taylor introduced Travis's dad, Ed Kelsey, who's like just an Ohio like football dad to Paul McCartney, and I'm just like, wow,
I,
what a life that is for Ed
it is
Kelsey.
amazing. I was
And it's just like, oh, have
also
you met my friend Paul? Like, are you kidding me?
I was also quite impressed. Well, they showed, I don't know, was it the Kardashian suite?
Oh my god, boring.
Who really are a global phenomenon, and everyone was
Yeah,
just sitting there just like being
looking
cool.
angry.
Like,
Yeah,
this is the
being
trend,
angry,
we're gonna
dressed in
be
black.
cool,
Yeah,
and the other suite just looked like people having a good time.
the best time. I still think my
So
favorite part, and we don't know this for a fact, but there was one video of like the cameras panning to Taylor and then her like chugging a drink, and I think her and her friend sitting next to her had like a bet going. That was like the next time they show us on the jumbotron, we have to do a drink. Apparently, they also showed her 13 times, which obviously is 13 hilarious.
all right, maybe,
But back to
maybe.
New Heights really quickly. So over the last maybe month or so, they had a like a bracket competition for best football name, and every week people would vote and kind of go down, down, down. And the winner was announced this week, and it was the Minnesota Vikings. And the person who submitted that name actually won a golden baby, like a giant golden baby. And that just brings me to our guest, who has a giant golden ice cream cone behind him. I don't know if you can see it all, but hopefully you can. So I just super excited to have him on. Chris Moe, he is the founder and CEO of Cartograph, which helps brands grow on Amazon. And he's going to talk to us today about so many things, but Amazon, CPG, health and wellness, potentially Ozempic. We'll see. So, Chris, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks. It's great to be here. And yeah, this is my golden ice cream cone. Did not win it in a bracket.
Can you tell us how you did get the golden ice cream cone? Because there's got to be something there.
Yeah, it's not that exciting of a story. Well, it depends on your perspective. I was walking down the street in New York City when I lived there, and it was just sitting on the curb.
Oh
I
wow.
mean,
I grabbed
that's
it,
great.
put it in a cab. Maybe it was someone's prized possession, and they just had walked away for a minute.
No, on the curb is good to go. I always get happy when we like get rid of furniture and put it on the curb and it's gone within an hour. We did that with a rocking chair this week actually. And
New
it
homes.
warms
So
my
good.
heart that it's found a new home. We just didn't need it anymore.
Yeah.
That's great. Love that story. I mean, the treasure you can probably find on the curbs of New York City.
Right? One man's trash is another man's golden ice cream cone.
Yeah.
Exactly.
There we go.
Well, so why don't you tell us a little bit about you, both about Cartograph and about what brought you to create it, your history before
Sure.
that.
So I can start at the beginning for me. So I started my career in New York as a McKinsey consultant.
Okay.
And so I worked there for about 5 years, spent a year in Australia, and worked across a lot of different topics, broadly, mostly about growth for brands that serve consumers. And then actually ended up doing a lot of education work, which was really fun part of my career. But towards the end of my time there, got reconnected with my co-founder John, who had we knew each other from college, and he had built the first Amazon team at GE in their consumer electronics division.
Oh,
Okay.
nice.
And
Yeah.
so this was like this was probably 10 years ago when we first started talking again. And so Amazon was like a lot smaller and a lot less popular back then. But even so, he had grown this into a lot of into quite a big business for the GE consumer subsidiary. And so he kind of felt that his life's purpose maybe was something more than just extension cords and light switches. And actually met our first client, Fourth and Heart, a ghee company. He met the founder at a party.
A ghee, like clarified butter ghee?
Like clarified
Okay.
butter ghee. And still work with them today.
Love it.
And
Nice.
he said, this is so good, can I find it on Amazon? And they said, oh, don't get me started. It's so hard to work with them. They're such a pain. And he said, let me have a look for you.
Okay.
And then started consulting. Cartograph was born, called me and said, hey, I know a lot about Amazon. Sounds like you might know something about consulting. And so it's been about 6 years. We've worked actively with about 200 different brands. We manage currently about 80, run about $250 million in annual sales on the platform, and spend about $30 million in on ads. And our clients span a lot of consumer categories. So a lot of food and beverage, supplements, beauty, baby.
Which do the best on Amazon, if I'm not mistaken. I feel like that's usually what I go to Amazon for. And so you guys are you're an agency, or do you have a platform or a technology as well?
Really an agency model.
Okay,
Like
perfect.
the way to think of us is we're kind of halfway between an agency and a brokerage.
Okay.
Because our
Oh, wow.
business model
Yeah.
is actually on sales success rather
Okay.
than ad spend.
Okay.
But and
Well, that we
because of
love.
that,
Let me just tell you that to start, because the number of times we talk to marketing agencies, and I get marketing agencies being a little bit different, but ad spend being how you're paid is just a funny model. It's like
it is.
It's like, how do we make more money? Oh, you spend more money on ads. So let's
Right.
convince you to do that.
Right. Yeah. And we also do we do quite a bit of work on kind of the operations and supply chain side too.
Oh, fun. Okay.
So it's
we should
like,
chat about that too then.
yeah, what should you sell? Most brands can't sell one of our clients. Most brands can't sell one can. So it's like 4, 6, 10, 12, 24. How do you package it? What does your supply chain look like? How should you interface with Amazon? And then pricing and profitability and so forth. And then we get to building the content, running the ads, and doing ongoing performance. So we're kind of like an outsourced e-com team you hire to solve the Amazon problem.
That's so interesting, because that's what we do on the website side of it, right? So we don't really do much on Amazon, but what we're up against a lot is, oh, well, my product is sold at Walmart at this price. We can't sell it for that online. And we're like, okay, then you probably can't sell that. No one in their right mind is going to buy that product if they can get it half off somewhere else.
Yeah.
At least if they search for it. So it's all about, I think, like you said, finding combinations of products. What can you sell here that's maybe creating different? How do you operationalize that? That's all super interesting.
For sure.
So what do you do? I mean, I guess tell us a little bit about what I'm interested in the operation side of it. So outside of just kind of the packaging, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, so a lot of brands will come to us, and we generally split our clients into 2 buckets, which are I mean, first off, we generally only work with brands that are omni-channel, so sell in more than one place and are
Right.
trying to enter the Amazon channel. Um, and they either tend to be what we call digital heritage brands, so they built their business about selling online, and then or they're brick and mortar or physical retail heritage brands. And so they come to us and they usually say, all right, I'm ready to do Amazon, but kind of like your Walmart example, I'm not exactly sure what to sell. I'm not exactly sure how to price it. I'm not exactly sure what will be profitable, competitive, a pain, what Amazon will accept. And so we kind of go through this process, and we often do the answering of those questions, including how you interface with Amazon, because there's actually like different ways to use their warehouses, different ways to sell them the product, and so forth. It's kind of like a triangulation exercise of what do you think, uh, what kind of like mirrors what you do elsewhere? What's like strategically useful to you? What's economically viable? Like, make sure you're selling something that doesn't lose money.
Yeah, of course.
And then what could be competitive? What are other players doing on the platform? And so even though those questions can be very they can be a very marketing and advertising question, they actually all really start in operations.
Well, especially, you showed a Kin Euphorics bottle, right? And if you work a lot in the food space, something we've come across even on the D2C side or on the website side is, well, this thing is heavy to ship and people don't like to pay for shipping. And especially on Amazon, if you're Prime, you can't charge for shipping. So
Right.
now you have a pricing question, and you have that's especially difficult when your product is also sold in stores.
Right.
Because now you have multiple channels where in theory on your website you could charge shipping. If you're on Amazon and Prime, you can't. If you're in a supermarket, there is no shipping. So how do you go about that if you're even involved in that conversation?
Yeah.
It's a lot of the work we do. It's a complex process. Yeah, and you touched on a lot of important stuff. So one, retail price matching is actually a super big challenge.
Yeah.
When you're across a bunch of retailers, because they tend to have what's called a most favored nation policy, which is we get to price at equal or lower than everyone else, and sometimes you'll get like 3 of them in this like price spiral. And then all of a sudden they're like, we're not making any money because we're selling it for too little. You have to give us more. And it's a mess. And so we have to kind of like untangle those.
Yeah.
The other thing that you mentioned on shipping is a very real thing. So one thing that's really interesting on beverage is really heavy, right? You're shipping water. There's actually a funny line on. So there's a lot of really smart people out there, like Nick Sharma being one of them in the D2C world, who have the perspective that like online is a marketing channel, grow it, and you're doing really good if you break even net of everything.
Oh, nice. That's
interesting. Okay.
Because like basically you just never get really good leverage on the shipping. And what we found is there's actually like a line on cost per ounce of a liquid.
Okay.
Which is basically like you can't, and it sort of depends on the cost of the cost of making the product.
Yeah.
But it's somewhere around 40 to 50 cents an ounce.
Okay.
If you are cheaper than that, then e-commerce doesn't really work for you. And so there's actually thresholds of that on dry goods too. It's like $3 a pound. But that stuff makes it really challenging. So there's like certain categories of product that you can't easily buy online, or they're not like if you're a startup, it just doesn't make sense to do online.
I'd love to touch on, and Belinda, I feel like I'm stealing all of your questions, but this is just saying like everything you're saying, I have a new question based on your answer. So you just brought up that, online is a marketing channel and you want to break even. So are you guys kind of looking
You're
at
lucky if you break even.
You're lucky if you break even.
So
I think, let's expand on that.
Yeah. That's not us. That's not our
No.
Okay.
But
that's
it
their
is
perspective on beverage. So beverage
very
products,
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, because you can do the quick math, right? So let's say you're selling a 12-pack. You made a new cool wellness beverage. Chances are you're doing a 12-ounce can.
Yeah.
Chances are you're going to sell it in like a pack of 12, let's say. Pack of 12, how much do you usually sell those for? You have like a nice beverage, probably like $3-4. So somewhere between 35 and like $35. But you start to do the math and you're like, okay, it costs probably 75 cents to $1 to make each can. There's a third of your margin.
Yeah.
It probably costs about $15 total to ship and pack the thing. And then, so we're up to like the mid 20s. And then you've got any costs of marketing, any costs of agency, other miscellaneous kind of like fees, platform fees, and so forth. And you're basically break even at $35. Now, the reason beverage is so hard, if we go into a grocery store, what are all the beverages priced at? Like below $3
Yeah.
in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
And so you're just getting, and the thing is, like, every beverage, even if you're like a functional beverage or something super cool and fancy, you're fundamentally competing with a can of soda.
Yeah.
Or a bottle of water. And
Yeah.
so that's the rub with beverage. I will say, for the majority of our clients, Amazon is a net positive contribution margin channel, like a profitable channel. And that's a big priority of ours, that we're able to build a business that's sustainable and contributes, double-digit net profit, net of all fees.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously challenging. And we had a client in the beverage, or a potential client in the beverage industry recently. And a lot of our kind of discussions in the background were, about how we're not a marketing company, right? We're an optimization company. So we're not concerned with driving traffic. We're concerned with selling to the traffic that's going to your site. But a lot of what we were discussing was, well, this is water. So how are we, like, are people buying water online? Like, I live in New York. I drink sink water. I love New York City tap water, right? Obviously, it's different places. Different places have different kind of policies, but then you have your Britas, then you have your coolers, you have your filtered taps, and now you have also obviously bottled water, which is a huge industry in its own. But how are you kind of fighting into that, and how are you doing that in a channel that people aren't normally buying water on?
Especially because a lot of clients, when they're seeing like maybe a dip in e-commerce, then they're just saying, we want to tackle subscriptions. Subscriptions is going to be what saves the day. And like you were saying, in this instance, it's not. And it's really difficult to explain that it's just, you were saying the other day, Dara, it's just a plateau that you're going to get to. And you have to consider, I love what Chris said, and we often start from the ops side, from the operations side, obviously logistics, supply chain, packaging, and just instead of starting with, well, hey, we're sustainable, and starting with a marketing bent, which I find a lot of brands do, especially startups, they're starting with the message and not really with how they're going to get their product to the consumer. Yeah, I mean, food and bev is not easy, especially not easy on Amazon.
Well, it's so interesting too, because I know I saw on your website, Magic Spoon is a client. I'm fairly surprised that they are big on Amazon. I don't know why I'm surprised. I think because I probably, maybe less so now, but whenever I come across a company that does a lot of like podcast advertising, and I think they did that. I know they were on like My Brother and Me, a lot of other, I think, Chatty Broads. I think they did a lot of podcast advertising a couple of years ago. To me, that's always like a direct to consumer, like on your website brand, right? Because they're using that marketing to pull people there. I know my upstairs neighbors have a Magic Spoon subscription. I see the Magic Spoon taped box. So I'm interested, and I know you probably can't share specifics, but I am interested in, I guess are they on Amazon Fresh or they're on Amazon regular?
They're on regular Amazon, what we call .com.
And
and so
versus Fresh. Okay.
What you're describing is a dynamic that's shifted a lot in the last few years.
Okay.
So they started as I would say they are the blueprint for a consumer goods company that started online and then has gone into retail. They started exclusively as a direct to consumer business. And so they were advertising everywhere. You started them on the podcast. They had a big ad buying campaign. This was a number of years ago. It was a little bit cheaper to advertise on things like Meta's platforms.
Yeah.
And so they built a really formidable business on those alone. And then they came to us and said, hey, we're thinking of going on Amazon. So this has been a change that's happened over the last few years. Is D2C founders have gotten a little bit less afraid of Amazon. I think there is this fear of, I don't own the data, it's going to harm my own conversion on my own site and so forth. And there's some validity to it, but I think what shifted is people realized the value being left on the table by how many people were looking at their ads and searching on Amazon. So a few benchmarks for you. So one is we've launched a number of brands kind of in the same picture from direct to consumer only to Amazon. When we're able to compare like addresses across the two channels, low single digit % of them appear on both sites. So we were actually surprised. There are a lot of people who just don't shop on websites and only shop on Amazon. And I have these funny theories about it. It's like people who like don't trust to put their credit card anywhere on the internet. And then,
but they trust Amazon.
And they put it on Amazon, or they're just like, head of household, I can't be bothered to have a bunch of stuff. And like, the other metric that's really interesting that we've proven out a bunch of times is that there's actually a typical number of people who look at your ads across the web, open up the Amazon app, and then search your brand name.
Yeah.
And so it comes down to about the way we do the math is if you're spending $1 million a month in digital ads, which is a lot, but so there's some brands who are doing that, you probably are getting about 250,000 in Amazon sales from people who open up the app and buy from you. So it's like a 0.25 return on your paid elsewhere. And so the combination of those two things, realizing the volume of actual cannibalization, and then two, realizing the kind of like value being left on the table, has shifted and caused a lot of brands to say, okay, you know what, this channel can be incremental, is largely independent, and isn't just like a drag.
That's so interesting too, because I a lot of my ideas come from my own experience, right? Which makes sense. And I am a massive Amazon shopper, but very specifically for, it's for me, it's never from an ad. It's never like I've seen an ad, let me go look for it on Amazon. It's, oh, I need sheets for my son's crib because I need something for my household. Like, what did I buy yesterday? Our salt twister broke, grinder, whatever you call it. I was like, oh, I need a new salt grinder. I'm going to Amazon to look for that. I'm not going to Google to look for a salt grinder to then get advertised that way or even have retargeting happen. So I guess I'm saying this with, I want to understand Amazon ads because I actually don't understand them. And when you buy ads, you're buying them in Amazon, right? You're buying like the sponsored posts. Yeah. So if I search low carb cereal, your ad for Magic Spoon should pop up somewhere, right? So tell me a little bit about that because I actually don't know how that works.
Yeah, sure. So, a quick comment on your shopping behavior. That's interesting. So Amazon, one way to think about it is it's what you described is what we sometimes call spear phishing.
Okay.
You're like, I have a thing that I want to find, a salt grinder. And so you go on Amazon and then you have the product there.
And I also, by the way, probably have a 100% conversion rate. Like when I go on Amazon because I need something because I'm spear phishing, I buy that thing, whether it's now or whether it's in my cart and I buy it the next time. I can think of maybe 5 times total where I haven't bought something because I'm kind of like, do I really need it? But usually, yes, I need it. And I buy it at that moment.
And people are so trained to that behavior. That's actually the behavior that takes them from ad to Amazon.
That's so interesting.
They say, "Oh, that's interesting. I know I know that I can buy it in 2 clicks. I know that I could return it. I know that like the reviews will be reasonably reliable and all that. I'll pull it up and do it." And the place that people do this the most actually is TikTok. products featured on like that go viral on TikTok.
Well, that's
spike
fair
on
because I don't
Amazon.
trust TikTok's browser. There is something weird. I don't remember exactly. I have done a few things on TikTok Shop, but before TikTok Shop was a thing, and it was just kind of like it would open. There was some sketchiness there with them like tracing keypads and stuff. So I was like, no, I'm opening this in Chrome. I mean, listen, I know it was like browser within TikTok, so I would never ever open anything within TikTok, or at least not input any data there. I would do that in another browser. But I think and this also goes back to, we talk a lot about inefficient ads. And what I mean is, if you have a product ad and you send me from that ad to your homepage or even to your collection page. So I'm talking about a meta ad, Instagram ad, right? And I see a pair of shoes. If I'm not taken directly, if I click on that link and I'm not taken directly to those shoes, I'm likely leaving. Because now you're doing what you just said, the reason people go to Amazon. You're making me do work to now find the product that you should have delivered to me, right? So there's a lot of like inefficiencies when people are creating their ads, whoever's creating it for them. Link to another example, and we actually did an episode on Allbirds a couple episodes ago. But probably after that episode, I started getting Allbirds ads because I was on their site for so long.
Sure.
And also, they probably know I have a kid because they were showing me toddler shoes. But I clicked on the ad; it took me to the product page. But the shoe they showed me was sold out, and the only option was notify me. And I'm like, why is that even an ad that's running? Like, why are you wasting your money showing me a product, getting that click, and getting me to bounce? So I think part of the reason, like, it can be one-click shopping from ad to cart, especially with Shopify, especially with Shop Pay. There is no reason why Amazon should be faster, because with Amazon, you now have to open the app or open your computer. You have to search for it. You have to find it. Now you're clicking, then you have to buy now, and it's natively more steps than if you had a really efficient ad that went straight to the product page. You have a quick checkout enabled and you go. And it's not out of stock.
But Amazon has trained their customers where to go. No, visually, where to go every step of the way. You can be just looking at it out of the corner of your eye. Your kids know how to use it. The colors work well. And this is what a lot of D2C brands do on their own websites. They try to go off book. They're like, no, we want to have a spinning add to cart button and things exploding. And that's where this is what makes Amazon so, even though I may be spending longer on the site sometimes because I'm spearfishing, I'm trained. Amazon has trained us so well.
I like to say the best UX design is one that you know. It's not about, it's like less about good. I mean, people used to talk about like beautiful web design or like, more effective design, and then like Craigslist and Amazon just stuck around. And
this is Belinda's. Sorry. No, Belinda is literally like on this. This is like her hill to die on. And she loves to call them whiz bangs, right? And it's like, if you give us a design where if you have a unicorn flying across your screen, it's not going to convert. Give me a black and white font. And then also you bring accessibility into the fold, and it's like, stop putting yellow on blue. Stop doing silly things. Yes, stop picking fonts that are 1 pixel wide. Like, you gotta design black and white, thick fonts, use Helvetica, and let's get some conversions.
I think I have actually, I've been told, why are you shitting on the design? And I'm like, when people say this is design, that's like, I don't care. I don't care. I need to know that I can check out. I need to know that if I'm coming to you from another country, the everything has been localized, that it's just again back to operations, and people know that you can trust it. There's nothing worse than you go into an online store and it's like, okay, add to cart, and then it's like, oh, but you need to do this because the shipping, and then we might only. People know Amazon, and I don't shop on Amazon. So, but
Belinda, you would be.
But I'm trained.
I'm trained.
You'd be a great guest speaker on one of our content proposals or content meetings, because you know what we do? We say, okay, you have this
Yeah.
Looks gorgeous.
Rubbish.
It looks okay, so what we're going to do on Amazon is we're going to Photoshop this, Photoshop this, Photoshop this, and then double the font size.
Yeah.
Or maybe take out some of the stuff that doesn't matter, just so you can read it on a mobile phone when you're going like this fast.
Right.
That's so important.
And like yeah, I mean, kind of bring it back, Daria, to your question on advertising. I think there's actually like a very different mindset. I like to say that Amazon is like perspiration, not inspiration, versus like an ad that really captures you or like compels you. Because if you think about a meta ad, right? You're finding somebody where there was some signal that at some point they were somewhat interested in this thing. You're basically interrupting their day.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
You're basically interrupting their day, and you really need to inspire them and compel them to be like, you know what I was thinking about or doing before, not important. Allbirds baby shoes, let's go. So Amazon instead is like, what we do is like a lot of the ads is actually about relevance capture. Find people who are on their way and direct them to that page to be as efficient as possible.
Yeah.
So actually, like it's almost like it's a totally different mindset, which is like, we need to find people who already are showing some signal degree of intent, and then make sure that our creative being the little Amazon image, the stars, the price, the ship speed, is the most compelling, that it will compel them to move there. And so your ads are on Amazon. They have like a totally different click-through and conversion profile. Like, good click-through is full percents, and conversion sometimes double-digit percents.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
And you're basically like, the premise of every ad is, if I put my little square, the like product square on Amazon, next to someone else's square, would I get some of the clicks some of the time?
Yeah.
Because someone is already there thinking about that thing. We can get them.
Yeah, and here's another, and this probably has to be our last question. This was such a good conversation, and then we'll wrap up a bit. But how do you, if you do, consider, I don't even know what they're called, but like the Amazon Top Choice label, and kind of some of the other Amazon things that they've added. I don't know if these things have names. The badges, but also other things like, and I have no idea how real this is, but they have, and it might be like a UX thing or a A/B testing thing. A couple months ago on my Amazon, at least, I see how many purchases in the last week of this product. And that goes into my purchasing decision. If I'm between two and I see one has been purchased twice as many times, I'm like, oh, okay, this one's obviously more successful. I'll buy this one. So because I know, again, me personally, I definitely have clicked on sponsored things if the media or image is enticing enough and it's kind of exactly what I want. I probably mostly buy the top pick if I had to look at my Amazon stats.
Sure.
So how do you, and sometimes you see a sponsored ad and then you see the top pick and they're the same product.
Right.
So do you, and how do you consider those? And is it really just about the media there?
Yeah, I mean, so most of those aren't actually your own doing. They are, they're like algorithmically placed there. And so what we have to do is think holistically of this is the creative. And so what can we do on performance of the product to position it in the way that you'll get that kind of creative advantage? And so the Amazon's Choice or Top Choice badge is actually, it's keyword search term specific. And so it's like it's a blend of performance on that search term. Now, if you see a bestseller badge, that means in a small subcategory, you are shipping the most units in that category. And so we will play these kind of interesting, small, exacting games around some of these sometimes of like, okay, what can we do to get 10 more units per day to make sure we have that bestseller badge? Or like, let's make sure our ads are really converting us well on this search term to get that top choice badge.
Okay, that makes a ton of sense. Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Belinda, do you have any last questions? Because otherwise I'm going to say, Chris, what is your, imparting or parting wisdom? What is
give us your... I mean, we didn't even get to Ozempic, and I'm going to put
We
I'm
can
gonna
make
put
this a little
Ozempic.
bit longer if we want to get to that.
Let's talk. It's topical. It's
Okay,
so
It
let's
is
talk about that.
topical, and
it's
I yeah.
so I mentioned this a little bit before the episode, but basically every January we look at we work in a lot of better for you categories. So we look at what are the New Year's resolution trends of the year because they really
Okay.
predict what people are doing, where buying behavior is going.
Yeah.
Like 1819, it was all about keto, and then
Okay.
last few years combo of like gut health kind of got bigger,
Yeah,
protein
right.
got popular.
Mhm,
Like
mhm.
there's little things, and like our job is to really be there for the early adopters and kind of understand where things are headed. So this year we looked, and like some of the smart people in the industry were like probably protein's going to be up this year because like Andrew Huberman's been talking about it and like all that kind of stuff like really dictates food trends. Almost all of the food trends were down, kind of like universally. And I'm talking down January versus January. That's how you
Okay.
kind of predict
Yeah.
like New Year's resolution prevalence. And so I think the interesting insight, on the other hand, skincare and skincare related terms were really up. And so it's not like Amazon's losing in search or something like that. Or consumer spending is really going down. We saw some, and actually the only other one that was up was sparkling water was kind of the one
Okay.
outlier. But interestingly, it was both healthy food and unhealthy, and like candy was down year on year. And so the conclusion was first I had to think about it for a long time. I was like, what could this be? And then the realization that the people most oriented to finding remedies for their health are your biggest spenders in a lot of these categories. And if those people found a solution that actually works for them, you're going to have consumption go down. And I think that was kind of like, it was a level of insight. Like people have been saying, okay, are people going to eat less? Is it going to be like, what are food trends? But I think the interesting one is like, what is this replacing in the early adopters? It's replacing people, and I actually think it's a really positive thing. People who have been trying so hard to make a change in their life, and they've actually found something that worked. People are very, very I think rightfully so cautious and like sometimes critical of like, is this like a drug solution or something? But I think it's an interesting angle that like people found something that worked, and now they're not doing as much of these other things.
Well, what's interesting too, and I don't know that this is at best a correlation, but you said skincare is up. I know a side effect that at least I've read about for Ozempic is like Ozempic face, which is apparently that it ages you prematurely. So it is interesting that I wonder if there is some sort of correlation there between their spending and searching less for a food solution, but maybe there is a side effect. Again, that is very, I mean, if there's a correlation, it's moderate, but that's what came to my mind when you said the skin. There were two things that came to my mind when skin was up. One was Ozempic skin. Two was there's like a massive trend right now, at least on TikTok, about European and foreign sunscreen and how the FDA has not approved a sunscreen filter in 20 years or something like that, but that European, Korean skincare and all of that has. So a lot of people are searching for international skincare right now, purely for just a better quality, newer sunscreen filter. So those are kind of the two things that came to my mind.
Is it also just saturation? There's just too much. So people just get into that, because you're being asked to download an app for everything or join something or, it's so much. I think just coming off of that, like I think quiet luxury is going to take a dive, and I think we're seeing the start of that.
Yeah.
Luxury brands that positioned themselves in the luxury market. It's been over the last 2 years. We have now saturated, if I have to hear the words Laura Piano once more, where, even if it's sartorially, it's like you're getting these influencers jumping on this whole quiet luxury trend. It's a bubble. It's not going to last. But there's opportunity for earlier, for people who are actually into things like sustainability and circularity. I think that's going to come.
Well, and
back
you also
again.
have, and I don't
Who
know if
knows?
this is related at all, but you also have the rise of brands like Quince, which are doing, it's like, if you're not familiar, it's, they take the, I wouldn't say it's like luxury, it's maybe like mid luxury, but they're making a more affordable version, right? They're taking the J. Crew cashmere and making a version that's half off in the same factory.
Right.
So it's, you know, it's like, why buy something J. Crew when I can literally get an exact same thing for 50% off?
It's a really interesting. So we've really expanded into the beauty category in the last couple of years, and so I've done a bunch of research in it. In beauty, price point is generally not driven by ingredient. Like ingredient and efficacy of products in beauty tends to be consistent across price points. It's actually experience, luxury, and positioning, which, coming from the food world where it's like super ingredient driven, it is like took a very different marketing kind of mindset. But yeah, like we act in beauty, they actually call what you were describing like mastige, like mass prestige hybrid. And yeah, there's definitely a demand for it. Like people want stuff to feel nice, and like it doesn't have to be that expensive if the cost basis isn't really that high.
Yeah. I mean, that's very interesting. I'm trying to think too, because I wonder if there is an element of it where even though it goes on your skin, it's not going like in your body, so people don't care as much about, even though it absorbs in a similar way. I wonder if psychologically it's not the same. I mean, I'm trying to think. I actually don't think I've once actually looked at the ingredients when I've purchased. I mean, I don't buy a ton of makeup. I usually go to Sephora and ask them, like, I have bags under my eyes, like, what's gonna work best? Can you bring me, like, I'm being serious. I don't think skincare wise, outside of like the primary ingredient where it's like vitamin C, hyaluronic acid, like what's the primary thing, I'm not really diving deeper than that. So it makes sense, and maybe I should be. I don't know.
Your sensory engagement with a consumable is like a lot more dramatic, right?
Yeah.
You feel it, you taste it, you feel how it makes you feel, all that kind of stuff. Versus a topical is like aspirational, experiential, like almost,
and it's kind of like as long as it feels okay and doesn't make me break out, that's kind of what, obviously I don't want a negative reaction, which is kind of what you would get with maybe something with a bad ingredient. And with the sunscreen, like, well, there is something I look for with the sunscreen, right? I don't want it to be cakey. I want it to like blend in properly. So like that's what I'm looking for. How you do that is not really my concern.
Right. It's like too hard to know.
I mean, the science behind creating beauty and skincare. I wonder if you've dived into that at all.
A little bit, and it's what's one of the really cool things. I actually saw a panel on the leading experts in sunscreen last summer, and one of the things that they were saying is there's obviously a huge rise in sunscreen, and a big driver is actually in derm or skin education. And TikTok's kind of been the place for that. Where before it was like you could just go into a Sephora or ask your friend, but now there's actually credible influencers out there saying, hey, these are things you should consider. These are things you should be considering. And one of the things that they cautioned is there's also bad trends. One of the things they said they're not a fan of is what they call cocktailing, where you mix your products into one thing.
Oh,
because I think the logic is I'm going to put them all on my face anyway. Why not skip a couple steps? But letting them sit on top of each other, you might have some reactions or something like that. And there might be some risks.
That's interesting.
But yeah, like the education level has really been empowered in beauty and skin by like TikTok and the current media format.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, there are so many influencers, like dermatologists. Like I'm Dr. So-and-so.
Right.
Yeah, super interesting.
And like 10 years ago, there's plenty of people on TV telling you how to eat.
Yeah.
Right. But there wasn't really anyone telling you how to put on sunscreen. Or like
that's another thing that's interesting. But okay, we do have to wrap this up. I think we could talk for hours just because it's like we're literally doing the same thing just on two different channels. So I think there's just so much we can talk about. Right. And we should continue to talk about. I also wonder if yeah, I don't know. The food trend thing was also very interesting because there's a lot of education now as well in like kind of the anti-diet trend, meaning
Right.
like the whole, and I don't mean like Whole30 anti or Whole Foods. I just mean like just eat everything in moderation, stop doing diets that like don't work and trying them, and it's just like eat like a normal person.
Right.
Um,
The
that I
keto
wonder,
blowback, I think, was substantial because keto was
yeah,
like the last great diet trend that actually
yeah,
worked for
before
a lot of
Ozempic.
people. Right. And then it worked for a lot of people. And then there were all these studies that it turned out it wasn't that good for you. There were like
Yeah.
actually long term, not great effects to it.
Probably
And so
intermittent. Actually, this is the correlation.
I
Intermittent
know, right?
fasting is probably the new one. And what is intermittent fasting? It cuts out a meal. It just
Eating
reduces
less.
eating. So it's like, of course, there's less search volume in food because it's all about. That's the correlation. That's amazing. That's so funny.
The great food industry conspiracy is people are eating less.
When really it just comes down to, I mean, I'm sure, I think everyone in the world has experienced this. You go to Italy, you eat pasta for a week straight, you don't gain weight, and you drink all day. And you're like, what is this? Why can't I do this at home?
Sugar.
And it's just like the stuff, the chemicals, whatever the FDA is doing, it's not the right thing. They're not clearing sunscreen ingredients, but they are allowing companies to put insane things in our food. So
Totally.
who knows? Well, anyway, now we are actually wrapping.
Yeah.
Chris, any final words, and where can our listeners find you to learn more?
Okay, first you can find us. Probably best place to find us is on LinkedIn, actually.
Okay.
You can add me, Chris Moe, and then we also post a lot on our company page on Cartograph. And feel free to reach out, add me. You can also email me direct if you like, chris@gocartograph.com. And any parting wisdom? I think the thing to consider for consumer brands right now is consumers are more so than ever concerned about like what will the product do for me, and so whereas we used to like blindly consume things, now it's like, well, is this this snack going to make me in a better mood, or am I going to feel better? And it doesn't actually have to necessarily be an ingredient that like changes something in your brain, but I think turning consumer products into like an experiential thing, and it can just be a positioning thing, is a big trend. I think that's where things are going and worth thinking about for any brand.
Yeah, that's super important. I mean, it goes, down to, we talk about, unique value propositions all the time, and that just kind of ties into that. All right. Well, thank you so much for chatting. We will definitely be in touch after this, and I'm going to play the outro song if it works. Maybe it did. Thank you so much,